Good evening, everyone. My name is Shirley Williams. I am the chair of the Mecklenburg County Women's Advisory Board. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our event tonight. So thank you all for coming out. We are glad that the rain stopped and did not hinder any of you from coming. So I just wanted to welcome everyone, and we are excited that you're here. I'm just going to give you a little background about the Women's Advisory Board. So we are appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we do have some Board of County Commissioners here. We have Commissioner Week here, and also Commissioner Dunlap, who is in the back. So we'd like to thank them for coming and supporting us on tonight. And one of the things that we do is that we report back to the Board of County Commissioners that issues that women are having in Mecklenburg County. And so then we would also give suggestions to the Board of County Commissioners on how these issues may be resolved, or just give them feedback on what we think would be the best way to help women in our community. So I am now going to read the proclamation. So the proclamation, City of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. Whereas August 26, 2019 marks the 99th anniversary of women in the United States gaining the right to vote with the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. And whereas the call for women's right to vote was voiced at the first Women's Rights Convention in 1848, and solidification of this right into law was the result of decades of work by committed suffragists who fought for this right. Whereas, even before they gained the right to vote, America's women were leaders of movements, academics, and reformers, and had even served in the Congress. Legions of brave women wrote and lectured for change. They let their feet speak when their voices alone were not enough, protesting and marching for their fundamental right to vote in the face of heckling, jail, and abuse. Their efforts led to enormous progress. Millions upon millions of women have since used the power of the ballot to help shape our country. And whereas at a time when women were meant to be seen and not heard, the suffragists braved censored and disgraced by speaking out on behalf of all women and organized for their rights. Remarkable women arose in each state and became part of history themselves when they successfully secured civil rights and political independence for American women. And whereas to these committed and determined women, voting was not the end of the journey for equality, but the beginning of a new era in the advancement of our union. These brave and tenacious women challenge our nation to live up to its founding principles, and their legacy inspires us to reach even higher in our pursuit of liberty and equality for all. And whereas the Mecklenburg County Women's Advisory Board has identified the theme for the 2019 Women's Equality Day program, an event to be empowering women in the workplace. And whereas this year's event will be held at the new Science Building on the campus of Johnson C. Smith University on August 19, 2019, between 5:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. And the public is invited and encouraged to participate in this free celebration. Now, therefore, we, by Alexandra Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, and George Dunlap, Chairman of the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim August 26, 2019 as Women's Equality Day in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, and commit its observation to all citizens. Witness our hands and the official seal of the City of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. And this was signed by Alexander Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, and George Dunlap, Chairman of Mecklenburg County, Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners. I'd also like to recognize Senator Joyce Waddell. Thank you for attending. So I'm going to call now, before I call, I would like all the Mecklenburg County Women's Advisory Board members to please stand. So some may be behind you, some may be in front of you. And these are the wonderful women that have helped to put this event together and for it to be a success today. So I'm going to ask Susan Elberry to come and introduce our moderator.
I'm substituting for someone tonight, so please excuse the hurried awkwardness. I have the distinct honor tonight to introduce to you Mary C. Curtis. Mary is a columnist at Roll Call. She's an award-winning journalist and educator based in Charlotte and Washington, D.C. Her coverage specialty is politics, culture, and race, and she's contributed to NBC News, NPR, and the Washington Post, The Root, and ESPN's The Undefeated. She talks politics on WCCB TV in Charlotte, so she's probably a familiar figure. She has worked at the New York Times and the Charlotte Observer, and she's a senior leader with the Op-Ed Project and was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University. So it is my honor at this time to give you Mary C. Curtis.
Thank you so much. This is such a relevant topic when we're talking about empowering women in the workplace. We see from the headlines every day, in every venue, in every profession it seems, there's always a new story about women and how they were just trying to be strong in the workplace. And just this week we saw even in the opera world, Placido Domingo has been involved. So nothing is immune. But we also know that women of color are disproportionately affected in this issue. Particularly in sometimes if women are farm workers or domestic workers or whatever, they really don't feel in the sense that they have the power to complain. Or when they're factory workers or in professions where there are few women. And we also see the Me Too movement, which was started by an African-American woman, Tawana Burke. And even in that case, her involvement with it in the beginning was kind of downplayed when more high-profile other women got involved. And so I am so thrilled that we have an amazing panel today to talk about this. And not only to share their expertise, but come to a place of solutions and a call to action. Because there are some things that can be done that we can work to a more equitable world for women in the workplace. So one by one, I want to introduce our incredible panel and to know that they will be making presentations and I'll be asking a few questions, but we will be leaving some time at the end because we know that you really want to get involved and get into the Q&A. So first we have Maggie Gerard, the one closest to me, a human resource professional. Now she had been a human resources professional for over 25 years, and she's worked for several Fortune 500 companies. She's a proud Army veteran and passionate advocate for veterans' rights as well. Her professional career outside of human resources includes founding the Puerto Rican Cultural Society of Charlotte, a not-for-profit organization. She's a former featured columnist at the Spanish language newspaper La Noticia. And Maggie is also a grassroots community activist and volunteer. She currently serves on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Citizens Review Board, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Human Resources Committee, and a Sign of the Times. Thank you for being here today. Next to her, we have Meg Maloney, who's the founder and counsel of Maloney Law and Associates PLLC. And as a founder of that company, she serves clients throughout North Carolina in a wide variety of employment matters, including sexual harassment and assault, state and federal whistleblower discrimination and retaliation for race, gender, and disability, wage and hour, and disputes involving employment agreements and trade secrets. She previously assisted corporations as a partner with Moore and Van Allen, and later as a senior vice president with First Union. And since 2008, she's focused on advocacy for employees. She's consistently named one of the top 50 women attorneys in North Carolina by Super Lawyers, one of the best lawyers in America, and North Carolina's legal elite for employment law. She's done pro bono work and served on the board for legal services and various arts organizations. She's also held various offices and committee positions with the Charlotte Women's Bar, the Women Warriors of Charlotte, Women Executives, and the North Carolina Advocates for Justice. Thank you so much for being here today. Next to her is Dr. Yolanda Holmes, a Women Advisory Board member. She's a native of Hollywood, South Carolina, and has a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice, Master of Science degree in Criminology, as well as a Master of Arts degree in Management. Recently, she completed her dissertation research on crime and safety programs in American public schools, graduating with a PhD from the School of Public Service Leadership at Capella University. In 2005, Dr. Holmes retired early from the United States Department of Defense Information Systems Agency after years of service, and currently, we're happy to say she's employed with Charlotte Mecklenburg School System, where she proudly serves on the Family and Community Engagement Team. She passionately works to meet the academic, social, and emotional needs of students and families in the district. Thank you. Next to her is Stephanie Carson, News and Community Partnerships Manager, Carolina Public Press. She has 2 decades of journalism experience, close to my heart, in print, radio, and TV, and as a special projects producer, an editorial director, and field producer for outlets including CBS News, Bloomberg Financial Television, and the Public News Service. Her work has earned her 2 Mid-Atlantic Emmys and an Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence. In addition to her journal, Stephanie co-owns an event company where she manages events, secures strategic partnerships, and maintains community and business relationships. She lives in Mecklenburg County and oversees news and community partnerships for Carolina Public Press across North Carolina. Thank you and welcome. And on the end, very important work is done by Carmen Moody, who's a victim advocate supervisor for Safe Alliance. She's a graduate of the University of Cincinnati with a Bachelor of Arts and Master of Social Work. She's a certified eviction counselor in South Carolina. In her current role, she's a victims advocate supervisor with the Sexual Trauma Resource Center at Safe Alliance. Their mission is to provide hope and healing to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. So thank you all. So, Maggie, now, undocumented workers or those on temporary work visas can be at particular risk of harassment and assault. Agriculture, food, and food processing and garment factories and domestic work and janitorial services are fields where many undocumented and immigrant women work. In principle, victims of sexual violence at work who bring charges have the same protection against deportation as survivors of domestic violence through U visas. Yet, many fear that reporting harassment or assault will put their immigration status at risk, particularly now when we feel that immigrant system is really under assault. Others may not know their rights or may find it difficult to access legal supports without knowing English. And retaliation against women who speak up against workplace sexual assault may involve threats to call ICE or revoke temporary work visas. So what are your thoughts, and can you provide any specific insights into this as it relates to women here in our area, and what resources and recourse they may have?
Well, as a human resources professional, my experience has been that all employees must present documentation. So based on that documentation, we assume that everyone is authorized to work in the United States. But we all know that that's not always the case. And what my thoughts are is that it's really important that any literature or any training is done in the native language. So I've worked for employers where all the materials have been translated to the language of the workforce that is more prevalent. And then my experience is also that there are companies that have sexual harassment training programs, but they're check the box type of programs. There's really not a buy-in into them from leadership. And so for these women, yes, it is more challenging, but educate the community, and that's where individuals like myself, who are out in my case, in the Latino community, have to educate women into what are their rights, and that they do have certain rights in the workforce, that they can go to the EOC, that they can go to a manager or a supervisor or someone that they feel more comfortable with to report when they feel that they are being sexually harassed. There's also an element of differences in culture. What may be acceptable in the Latin American culture is not acceptable here in the United States. So some women may not say anything because they feel that that is okay, when in fact it is not.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Meg, now during fiscal year 2014, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission reported that its staff resolved roughly 26,000 charges of employment discrimination based on sex and recovered $106.5 million for individuals, along with substantial changes to employer policies to remedy violations and prevent future discrimination without litigation. Also, North Carolina does not have any state laws against workplace sexual harassment, which means that women have to file in federal court with a lawyer that can practice in federal court, as well as going through the EEOC. Now, as a proponent of employment matters, including sexual harassment and assault in the workplace, how have your clients benefited from having representation? And what are the disparities for those who aren't able to secure counsel? And also maybe where can they turn?
Well, it's really important for anyone going through sexual harassment, sexual assault, to get a more holistic approach to helping them. Anyone that's been harassed, whether they've been touched or not, there are studies that show the rape victim all the way through to someone who saw somebody stand up with an erection and kind of show it off. I interviewed a woman one time that didn't remember that incident, and then during the conversation she remembered and started hyperventilating. Now you wouldn't think that would set her off so much, but it did. And so one of the things I think we're very unaware of and uneducated about is the degree of harm psychologically caused to someone who suffered whatever the array of violation is. And I think it's really important that you don't just deal with it from the legal standpoint, but a more holistic standpoint. And that's something that I make an effort to just, be a student of psychology, the varieties of panic attacks. Because for some reason people will call me and say they're parents having a panic attack while they're driving and not even recognize it for that. The other thing that is really important in any lawsuit, go to what you're supposed to do. So if you are aware of sexual harassment in the workplace, there's two things. You have a duty to report, even if the person who's the victim asks you not to. So one would be workplace violence, the other would be sexual harassment. I've got a case right now that the company terminated the director of HR who had no one to complain to because it was so male dominated, and the CEO of the company who was overseas was giving the CFO just free rein, and he just had the hots for this director. And so one of the phrases we've ended up coining, just from dealing with Dr. Christenberry and now this other case is erection hub. And it is exactly what you think it is. It means something that's hard and can be pressed against your body or rubbed. They get bend their knees and then they kind of go like this. And that is a huge violation for people. So this woman experienced that. She was afraid to report and have it go all the way to the CEO. And guess what? Once she did, she was terminated. And the reason they gave was that she waited too long to report. And so the timing of her report is the grounds for termination. Well, guess what? They're not going to get like all of that, right? But there is a profile too with people who commit sexual harassment, and one of the things that I've gotten interested in is trying to understand what that looks like and what some of the commonalities are, because you can do a much better job when you interview people and you're aware of that. Because the people I interview will ask me like, well, how did you know that? How did you know to ask that question? And it's because I've been doing this a lot, right? And I'm trying to pay attention to the depths and breadths of some of the commonalities to the cases, so that's important too. And then another thing I would say that, like whenever you report though, you become a target. So either the company's going to do a good job or they're going to do a bad job. And depending on the person's wherewithal, a lot of the people that experience this have either been abused in their past, right? So a perpetual predator in this realm, they can sniff them out. Just like a child molester, right? So they know, and they go for that person. In my Christenberry cases, we settled a bunch of them before we had to file public suits. But when we filed public suits, I don't know if anyone's ever read one of my lawsuits, but I wouldn't want to get one because they're very long and detailed, and we do our homework ahead of time. So I know more, or I knew more about Dr. Christenberry than his own mother by the time we were done with him. So, that's, also important to know is, just the vulnerability and how they can smell people out. And then the other thing, we just had a case where we got summary judgment today. It was supposed to go to trial next week, and it was a case where the observer calls him the towel-clad yoga man. I don't know if anyone's paid attention to that at all, but he is a predator in my view. And we have two former employees that have filed charges with the EOC. There's other people that have come out of the woodwork telling me that they've experienced some inappropriate behavior by him, from touching to just horrible comments and threats. And what he did was, while the cases were pending involving two of the employees that I represent, he sued the mom of one of those employees and claiming that by repeating and warning the parent of another employee and saying, something bad happened to my daughter, and something that she considers sexual assault. So he sues her for defamation. Well, this woman wouldn't have had anyone to represent her. I just did it for free because we're trying to change and create some standards in the yoga community and also in the massage realm, right? And one of the things that's been a big disappointment as we were preparing and listing witnesses is the number of people, because he was so threatening, right? He's threatened people, if you talk about me, if you speak up, I'll sue you. And so I made sure people knew, if you get sued, you got me.
That's really interesting to know that one of the tools will be a retaliatory lawsuit. So let's go down the panel and we'll get back to that, because that's a really fascinating piece. Another way you can threaten someone to silence them. Also, I thought it was very interesting that we didn't have state laws against that, which I really did not know. So,
it's all the employment claims, right?
Okay.
So you just have wrongful discharge, and then you can bring up the Title VII categories, not the ADA, not age, but you can bring it in that context.
So it's good that we have lawyers like you that can help folks go through that thicket, which is very complicated. So, Dr. Holmes, now many workplaces have significant power disparities between workers. These power imbalances, particularly given women's lower likelihood of being in the senior positions, are a risk factor for sexual harassment and assault. You have interns, students, and workers in junior positions may be especially concerned with retaliation, as we spoke about, the handling of internal complaints and continued vulnerability within their job. Rainmakers, such as a well-known professor, well-recognized or hiring partner, or grant-winning researcher, may feel they do not need to comply with the rules that govern other employees and may not be disciplined if accused of sexual harassment or assault. We've seen that a lot in the university system. Now, what are your thoughts and insights on this particular issue?
So my initial thoughts, mic is very loud, so let me just lower my tone. My initial thoughts are shut the front door. When you think about what you just stated in regards to the state of North Carolina, and there aren't any laws, Senator Joyce, it really just blows my mind. So when you talk about the issues that affect college students, one that affected me myself years ago, and that's why it's mind-boggling to me almost, well, I graduated 5 years ago, but years ago, I experienced a similar circumstance where I was sexually harassed as a college student. And the fear that college students have, not only from their peers of being sexually harassed or sexually assaulted or even stalked, all of those various factors come into play, and then you have to enter a classroom or be an intern and be sexually harassed by a professor or rainmakers, if you will. It's just really, really unsettling. And we as the community and as leaders and advocates need to hold our colleges and universities accountable. I don't care if you bring in $1 million worth of research money. They need to be held accountable. Outside of the classroom, there are a lot of things that we cannot handle in regards to how one student interacts with another student, but we can definitely handle a professor who is sexually harassing a student. We need to be very vocal in our terms of agreement when they are employed, and if circumstances take place, we need to act quickly, especially if that college or university is receiving funding from a state. We cannot just sit back and allow those types of incidents to happen. And in my particular situation, I did feel vulnerable. I felt that I had no one to talk to. But after the internship, I stood up because I was tired of this man calling me constantly on the telephone and asking me to go out with him, and tired of his wife being fully aware of it and not saying anything to help me. So we have to encourage our young women, and in some instances men, and then thinking about the totality of what sexual harassment is today. It's no longer just it encompasses a lot of different factors now. So we have to be very careful to ensure that we are encouraging them, that we prepare them, and that we hold those universities who are receiving our monies, our taxpayers' dollars, to fund a lot of these universities and research that's going on, ensure that they are being held accountable and that they will receive some level of discipline or being fired from that particular university.
A little bit of a follow-up. Do you think that some of these judgments that are being held against, like Michigan State and with the women speaking up about the doctor who's employed there and others, will that be any sort of deterrent with these multi-million-dollar settlements that some of these universities are having to pay?
I hadn't specifically heard about the Michigan case, but I do believe
it's the doctor Nassar with the gymnastics.
Yeah.
Oh, the gymnastics, okay.
And the lawsuit itself is publicly available. It's a good read.
And your question is, do we think that some of those
is that what we go after with some of these universities universities are really having to pay out big now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And alumni of those universities need to be aware, the community needs to be aware, but I do think that would serve as a deterrent to decrease the amount of sexual predators that are teaching classes and harassing women in their classes, whether it be male or female. I do believe that that will serve as a deterrent because no one likes to put out so much money when we know that we could have been advocates and we could have done something in the beginning, and we're fully aware of it.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's so brave. So many of the young people are speaking out. I have to say, when you were saying that, I recall a situation when I was in college of a science professor offering the grade for, and I was so naive, I think I dropped my books on the floor. It's just you don't even want to deal with that. And you're left and you don't know if the university will support you. Because who are you, a little 19-year-old, you know? So I really appreciate what you're bringing out. For Carmen, for Stephanie Carson, yes. About 41% of women in media and entertainment say they've been sexually harassed by a colleague or boss at some point in their careers, according to a news report. The highest rate among white-collar industries. And we know how much Fox had to pay out, right? The study, What Me Too Means for Corporate America, was conducted by the Center for Talent Innovation, a New York-based think tank focused on workplace issues. The report found that across 8 industry categories, 34% of women have been victims of sexual harassment, defined as an unwanted sexual advance or obscene remark. The results confirm that the problem is unusually rampant in the media business. Can you share your thoughts on how being in an industry that is relationship-driven and rewards like visibility and influence can breed harassment?
Absolutely. The waters get muddy when you work in the media industry, as you know. And I'm fortunate now that I work for an organization that's founded by a woman, and we don't have this culture at all at Carolina Public Press. But I have the battle scars from my time at CBS, and I don't mind to share it all. I witnessed it, I experienced it, and it's tough in your culture because, you're working late nights, you're dealing with really tough stories, and you get by with humor. And so then the lines get really blurry because it gets late at night, and you're having a good time, and all of a sudden somebody takes it too far. Like I had a supervisor show up on my doorstep one night when I was a young reporter at 11 o'clock at night, thinking that he was making some assumptions that did not happen. Tried them 10 years later at the Democratic National Convention, by the way, in Charlotte, and again, it was, denied. But anyway, and I did for the record. But I witnessed it too, at CBS in Philly, I was a producer for the main anchors, and I was in the news director's office when the anchor was going to meet the Prince of Monaco, and the news director told her to sex it up. And that news director, by the way, is female. And I think that, back to your question, I think that's part of the issue as well, is that I always say that my present employer accepted, there are terrible managers in the news business. They get promoted from within, none of them were taken aside and taught how to be managers. And on top of that, in many instances, there were women that I did not feel as that were my advocates in the news media. Everyone was kind of out for themselves, kind of culture. So that makes it hard. And I don't mean to paint all death and despair, but it certainly gets really complicated and convoluted when you're in a newsroom. And not to mention the fact that as a TV reporter, when you're sent out and you have to go avoid sheriff with his hands all over you, how do you confront that as sexual harassment? You bet you're never going to get a story again, right? So
yeah, no, and also, we all know that so much in TV is visual, and I've noticed that men can be on air. If you're older with the gray hair, you're distinguished. But women, they want to, it's like, 40 is like, out the door almost. Do you think that now that you do see women like Andrea Mitchell, other women who are aging in the industry, that women themselves as viewers, that we are more open, the business to broadening our sense of who we want to see giving the news?
I think the public definitely has a role with that. I think we are more accepting, and there are examples like Andrea Mitchell. The caveat to that is those are women that survive also, discrimination because they had a baby. And that's separate from our topic, but I think that's important to note. And that's ultimately why I chose to leave my time at CBS, is because I was the 8th woman to have my job change drastically after returning from maternity leave. So, it's women perhaps that choose not to start a family or choose not to be blatant about starting a family and what have you, but they're able to survive to that point. I think, that's an important part of the story too.
Yeah, and we have to have also, let's face it, men and others involved in the fight as well. Not to put it on our shoulders, as far as the importance of family, that men should take some leave off perhaps. And that they should be supportive of their partners, their wives, mothers, children, all of that. Yeah, I only have one child. I always like to say maybe I would have had 2, but the youngest is called New York Times because I was working so hard there. But I'm really grateful and admiring of younger women who are basically speaking up and demanding to have the tough assignments and have children. So thank you for the work you do. Carmen, a number of studies indicate that sexual harassment has negative mental health effects, which, we also have refer to that. The people who just go hyperventilate and get upset and sometimes don't know why. Exploratory research on sexual harassment suggests that it can lead to depression. One study reported that 1 in 10 women who experienced harassment had such severe symptoms that they met the definition of PTSD. In addition to negative mental health effects, researchers have found higher risk of long-term physical health problems in response to repeated long-term gender-based harassment. It can also lead to increased risk of workplace accidents by leaving workers distracted while working in dangerous jobs. Think of that. And they also lead to significant costs for both mental and physical health services. Now, in your current role, can you speak some on the trauma that the women within our county are experiencing as a result of sexual assault and some of the resources they can turn to deal with this problem?
Yes, I can speak to that. So, as mentioned, the holistic approach to supporting someone who's experienced trauma is important. With our agency, the structure of what we have is starting with advocacy first, which is getting people connected to those community resources, because if someone has experienced a traumatic situation, they don't know where to turn to. They are distracted and they, like you mentioned, their work performance is impacted, which then impacts their financial stability, and they're not able to pay bills, they're not able to feed their children, and so it trickles down into a whole family impacted by trauma, which is why we offer secondary services at our agency, because while someone is, experiencing something, their whole family is then trying to figure out how do we support you. So trauma can present itself in multiple ways. It can be, like we discussed, in physical ways. It can be headaches, it can be eating changes, it can be sleep disturbances, which impacts the higher risk scores, like you mentioned, accidents outside of the workplace and in the workplace. It can be, stomach issues, and trauma symptoms don't always just come right away either. So someone can have something that is triggered by a different situation. It can be a smell, it can be a stressful situation that can then bring those trauma symptoms out, where they're hyperventilating or they are crying and they don't know why. And it can be something that they themselves can't fully express. It can be mood changes and mood swings, and they're trying to cope and function in their daily lives, and they're finding it difficult to really do those things. So the importance of having the holistic approach in this process is that trauma isn't just one size fits all. It's depending on someone's experiences. As discussed, someone may have experienced multiple traumas in their lives, and they may react differently to different traumas, and that also may play a role in how they react to this current harassment that they're experiencing. So it's all compounded on each other. And trauma is something that, especially in the area, we're seeing people who are coming in every single day, who are trying to hold their lives together, by, this strain when they've experienced trauma and they haven't had any place to turn to. So places like community support services, our agency, Safe Alliance, Safe Passage is also in South Carolina, which is also very close. But a lot of the community agencies and support groups are ones that are heavily connected into supporting the victim and supporting the trauma healing. Our hospital systems too do a great job in seeing people as they're coming in, follow very closely to a traumatic event, and they're doing well with training and having staff being knowledgeable of how to get people connected as well.
Great, thank you. I mean, because you're right, the stress, you're trying to make a living for your family, and you have this on top of that, it can be very difficult to deal with. I'm going to throw a question out, anyone can answer. We talked a lot about women and harassment in the workplace, but I want to acknowledge that men too are also have issues of sexual harassment, both by men and women in the workplace, but sometimes they may feel because they're men, they shouldn't feel odd about complaining about it, like, they should be able to deal with it, or they would be looked on as weak or even made fun of. In any of your work, have you dealt with this particular issue as well, and what would be your advice? Yes, ma'am.
I definitely have. So the end of it has an amusing element, but anyway, this man worked in a restaurant setting, and he was a dishwasher, and what they did to him was they would take the hose and put it between his legs and do this. They would take hamburger patties and make it into a long pink cellophane wrap something, try to stick it down his pants, and then he would get the juice or blood from the meat.
I definitely don't want to eat that hamburger.
No, he was very traumatized. So I filed this suit, and the owner of this restaurant was not in Charlotte, it was a little bit outside of the city. So this guy calls me, and he's telling me, you don't know what you're doing. You're just a little nothing and stupid woman. Don't you know who I am? And da 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 da. And by the time the first tone, I'm like, my phone has a record feature. So I reported him, and by the end of it, he finally got a lawyer, because I wrote a very detailed suit for his benefit too. And to the lawyer, I said, well, first of all, I got your man on tape, making all kinds of boneheaded comments, and one of the reasons I have my own firm is so that no one can tell me this case isn't worth a lot of money, because it's not about the money. This may be some of his dignity back. But the other thing you find is when it's male on male, the owners of a company will not be able to say, well, why didn't you just clock him on?
The big macho.
Yeah, the cases get very much devalued, but you have to treat them the same and try to look for ways other than money to help them.
Carmen, do you ever have men to come and need your help with the Safe Alliance and so forth?
Yeah, we definitely have men who come because a lot of times they don't know where to turn for their immediate support. They're embarrassed, their family is, saying the same thing, why don't you just, deal with it or ignore it or hit somebody or fight somebody, and that's not always what someone wants to do. Someone wants to just be heard and understood and understand their value, and that what is happening to them is inappropriate. And also, a lot of times, that people are coming and we have to do a lot of education because they don't know what to make of it. They know that they're uncomfortable, but they don't know what it means. And being able to say, yes, that you can be harassed, you can be sexually harassed, and this is a violation, and having to break that down because they're not familiar with, the culturally, it hasn't been, introduced to them that they themselves can be harassed.
I want to open it up to the audience now, and I know you have some great resources in every area to see if you have some questions. Although I do want to come back at the end and talk about the resources and where to turn to, because you want to make sure there's always a call to action to see that you can do something. So I think we have a couple of mics here. Does anybody in the audience have any either comments, questions, or anything they'd like to share? Yes.
Hi, I had a question regarding, you said that if you report the incident to a supervisor, is that any supervisor, or is it, as far as being a mandatory reporter, is that just the HR department?
It's not, it's anyone in a management or supervisory position. And there are defenses that are different depending on whether it was reported and then what timely and adequate action was taken in response, and who is the harasser. Because if the harasser is a management level employee or a supervisory employee, then the company has direct liability, even if they didn't have prior notice and an opportunity to fix it. So you've got, if it's an owner, it's the CFO, and they've got direct liability, but there's a defense that you get as a company if it's reported up and you try to take action.
Also, a lot of times your employee reference guides or your employee handbooks will stipulate that it's your direct supervisor or any other supervisor or manager that you may feel comfortable with. And so there may be someone in another department that you have a trust factor, and that you may feel more comfortable, and then you can share with that person, because they are in a management type role, then they are obligated to see that it is investigated.
I have one more question. And so then, as far as in your handbook, if it says that management and workers shouldn't have relationships, does that stand in court, or is that just in the handbook?
The nepotism policy, well, not nepotism, not fraternization, I'm sorry, went to a different place. Well, I think that any policy that an employer has can be enforced. I think that maybe the attorney can answer better that question in regards to.
So if you have the policy and you enforce it consistently, you're okay. But what usually happens is the boy gets to stay and the girl gets to leave, right? And so that's a discriminatory application of the policy. They'll pick a higher paid person to keep, or the person in the sales position, not the one in the admin position. And that has a discriminatory feature, so that creates liability.
We had a question over here. Oh, I'm looking at a couple.
Good evening. I have a question for you, Dr. Holmes. What types of policies are in place for our students in CMS when dealing with sexual harassment? We talked a lot about workplace harassment, but my question is for our kids. What policies are in place and what kind of teeth do they have to ensure that, if students are learning these behaviors, they don't go into adults that are practicing these behaviors?
So in the student handbook that parents receive and the information that students have, I'm not sure if it directly lists sexual harassment in there, but it does talk about specific policies and procedures a student must take if they're being bullied, if there's problems that they may have, who to see and who to report that to. But when I think about the handbook and how it's written, I do not specifically see anything in there that says sexual harassment, but there may be something. But one of the main things that I know and I encourage my students is they have to understand that that's what's really happening to them. Because most students don't realize that they are being sexually harassed or certain things that are being said to them. I know I probably shouldn't say this in public, but I have encouraged my daughter and my son, especially my daughter, that if she's harassed, pop him in the mouth and then you go and tell someone. Because I don't encourage violence, but when it gets to a point, just pop them and then go and inform someone. But that's a great question because it is becoming more prevalent in our schools, especially as they get into high school. And what does that look like and how does it make you feel? And I've always expressed it to some of the youth and the students that we see, if you feel uncomfortable, then something is happening that you do not like. and you need to at least go to the counselor or your teacher who's right there, but report it. Because the one thing I didn't do when I was in college, I didn't report it. So because I didn't report it, that meant that the college may or may not have been aware that it was happening, and that the lawyer that they entrusted the interns to go and have an internship with was sexually harassing the young ladies. So I encourage individuals to report it, and then also serve as an advocate. I served as an advocate at that time for other women. And if I may share this quick story with you. So when I finally opened my mouth, other women embraced me, other college students embraced me, and then we went into warfare. So other students had heard about what we said and what we did, and we didn't necessarily have to go into physical warfare, but we utilized our pen and our pencil, and we researched policies from the school level. And then another young lady came to the door, and she talked about how a coach forced her into the closet. So then that sent my twin sister and I into, 1 to 20 power activity. And went out. We started helping women on campus. So when we're talking about empowering women, we have to be their voice and support them, and not just sit around and look and say, oh, she waited for 40 years to open her mouth. I encourage women to open their mouth now, because it strengthens your case and it strengthens the empowerment that you have. But for students, I encourage the same. Just report it to your teacher and then go to the counselor so you can ensure that you're being assisted.
I think that's an excellent point, because if you are being harassed, that this person, you're not the only one it's happening to. And that if you start to speak up, you will have allies, and that's so important to have allies. And I love that question, because so many kids in even middle school and high school, you're starting to grow in puberty and you're getting comfortable in your bodies. And we know how difficult it is when there's the teasing that goes on. And you really, as you say, need to report that, because that can really affect you for the rest of your life. And I've had friends who, if you're developing early and people think your body is a problem, they are allowed to comment. And we know how difficult that can be. So that's an incredibly important point. Thank you for that excellent question.
And then also say that in our schools now, there are cameras. So a student can report it, but then we can also go back and look at it. So cameras do exist in the schools. Not in the restrooms, but in the schools.
We have some more questions? Yes.
Several of my colleagues and myself filed the ERA bill. And what that will do is, North Carolina will be the 38th state to ratify it. Because that's what it takes, so that it will become an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Our majority colleagues will not put it on camera, so it can come to a vote. So I need your help in advocacy to help us advocate so that we can get that bill ratified by the state of North Carolina. And I'm sure you know something about it. So what methods can you do, are you put together to help us get that and verify?
Well, from the Women's Advisory Board, we definitely work to research and meet the growing needs that exist in the county, and then we take all of the information that we receive. So one of the ways that we can work to do that is to be able to have that information. I'm on the advocacy, the chair of the advocacy committee, work together to research and have more information and work along with you so we can present that, and then have the community made more aware about the issues and the information that we come across and that we need to show that this is one of the most important topics that exist in the county for women, and then we can continue to advocate. So our biggest position would be awareness, and bring awareness to the community of the plight that you're having and how we can be supportive of what needs to take place so we can ensure that that bill passes.
You can also write your Senator, House Representative, hi, Shamira Wright, Congressional District Leader from the BRA&C Alliance. So, sorry to jump in.
But get that plugged in, please.
Yeah, plug it in, real nice and easy. So, basically, if the bill is right now in the Judiciary Committee. So if you can go ahead and write your senator and write your House representative from your community, representing Mecklenburg County, Jeff Jackson, Craig Myers, Mustafa Muhammad. These are just a few people that are representing Mecklenburg County in Raleigh. Write these people, tell them that, you know, get in touch with the people on the Judiciary Committee, tell them this is important. It's been 208 years we've been trying to get the ERA passed. Women are still not in the Constitution. It is a great time to be a woman despite all of the issues that we are encountering. However, we are voiceless in this society. And with the RNC coming to Charlotte very, very soon, and with our so-called president that we have, the main thing that we need to do is just, like you said, raise awareness. But there is something you can do. You can write City Council. Thank you, Charlotte, Mecklenburg County Commissioners, for adopting the proclamation. We appreciate you, and thank you for your support in the ERA. But there is still more work to be done as far as student, you know, letter writing campaigns. Counselors, there is a lot of trauma surrounding women being, you know, sexually abused in the movement. This is the way that we get it on the books and we make sure that it stops happening. We have to be put in the Constitution because as of right now, we don't have the same rights as men, but this is how we gain our full access to rights as women in the United States.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. You did wait any time for that message.
Shameless plug.
We have some more questions? Good evening. As a woman in her more mature years, I have a question. I feel really bad. I have two friends that work for over 20 years, both of them, for two large companies. I won't mention their names, Wells Fargo, Liberty Mutual, who suffered from ageism. One was harassed repeatedly until she finally resigned. The other one just recently resigned. She was told at her last performance review, she got outstanding reviews for years. And at her last one, she was told, "Mary, you make more money than anybody in the department, including me." She took that as a very broad hint that her head was on the chopping block, and she resigned. So I just wonder, is there anything to be done about this kind of ageism?
One thing to keep in mind is once you resign, you lose a lot of rights, especially under North Carolina law. We have wrongful discharge. We don't have, they had to resign, or they chose to resign, because it was really bad. We don't recognize constructive discharge under our state law. It's creeping a little bit, but it's not there. And so you just have to keep that in mind. And like any of these categories, so like with sexual harassment, it's not about sex, it's about power, right? So the ageism, the gender, the race, religion, all that stuff, it's about power. And if you have someone you care about that's experiencing it, what I do is I ask, wait, who's your support system? And I give that person a job. You know, this person, to survive in this environment, they repressed a lot, they've endured a lot, you know, it's on their shoulders. And I tell them, you know, just visualize that you're taking that weight off and putting it on me. But you really have to pay attention to what's going on with people. Some of my clients are suicidal, you know, and I keep my phone in my bed with me in case they need to call me. You just have to realize that it's, you know, it's about power, and no matter how much money you give them, like you're talking about, oh, will they listen because of the money? No, not always. And it depends on who it is. If it's not your money, so if it's a municipality instead of a corporation, where it's affecting their direct paycheck, their bonus, two different things.
Yeah.
So you gotta, that, you can never give someone enough money to make them whole again. If they've experienced severe discrimination, oppression, harassment,
retaliation is horrible.
Gonna add, I mean, I can relate, they chip away at your abilities, right, and through criticism, and so by the time you realize that something is wrong here, you can't even get your head straight, you're so beaten down, and it's something I personally experienced as well, and I wish I had handled it differently, but.
You just need to get to someone you can talk to, who can explain to you what's going on so that you're empowered in at least recognizing it and knowing what your options are and aren't. That information gives you some of your power back. But anyone who's experiencing this, they need to get their power back. And when you're in a career like journalism or entertainment, dance, there's a line this long of somebody who's going to take that position. So if you whine a little bit, or you just make a big deal about what, someone grabbed your butt, or this is something that they do. And here comes the person to sit down. Yeah, that's lovely, huh? So there's all kinds of stuff like that goes on.
We had a couple more questions, I see. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to make first a comment. I wanted to share with you guys that the YMCA of Greater Charlotte does a really good job with sexual harassment and making sure that we take our job serious there when it comes to our children. I just recertified. I'm a certified personal trainer there. I work with the active older adults, cooking vegan meals for them. I teach group classes. And when I was on the fitness floor, I worked with the kids. But regardless of what you do, they are so serious about it. So I want you guys to feel a little bit better if you do take your children or put them in programs there. Know there's always something going on. One of the first thing that opened up when we had to take a class I took last week online, it was called I Am Sam, S-A-M. And the first thing it said, they didn't even sugarcoat it. It said, molestation. What is it? How do you identify it? What do you need to do? Who looks like it? What is the rate of it? And it broke it down. It was like no chasers at all. So if anybody here is a part of a company or an organization or starting their own business and you want to have a really strong program in place with a lot of videos and interactions and quizzes and things of that nature, I would definitely encourage you guys to reach out to the Greater YMCA of Charlotte. The head office is right in the same building as the Dowd YMCA off of Cardinal. They do not play. Also Saturday I did my CPR as well. So they hands-on with that, and you have to make sure that you know what you're doing. So it wasn't even only online, but it was in person, and if you didn't pass, you couldn't leave the class. So I wanted to let you guys know we have about 19 locations here. It employs and it takes care of a lot of our children here. They're doing an exceptional job. So if you guys are ever looking to partner or anything like that, I wanted to make you guys aware of that. And one question that I definitely had for the panel, I used to work for CMS about 2003. And now that I'm going back into the school system, I did orientation today. I was wondering for myself, how can I make sure I protect myself? I did orientation today, had some questions and a lot of information that I needed to read online and in person. And having just done all the great stuff for the Y just about 5 days ago, how can I protect myself? Because I know when I was about 90 pounds heavier, about 15 years ago, a lot of times they thought I was a middle schooler, and now that I've lost 90 pounds, I know depending on which school I go into, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, I may be considered to be in the population of students. So I was just wondering from the panel's perspective, what can I do as a fall into the staff category to make sure that I protect myself from, of course, staff to staff and also staff to students.
Okay, within CMS, we're required to take courses now, which governs how we are to act in the workplace and especially around students. So in regards to your protection, there are classes that we must take It talks about sexual harassment. There's training that we have to go through. It just governs everything about what we do as employees in CMS. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of teachers that blend in. Even in middle school, I would pass the teacher and I'm like, well, you're the teacher. So they blend in. I'm sure it's at an alarming rate in high school. You can't even tell the difference now. But as far as protecting yourself, you would just, and I'm not sure if you're saying protecting yourself from a student, right, or you're talking about the staff, or both. So with, like I said, with that, you have those training courses that we must take and that we must understand. And if there is a situation that is going on, you report it to your supervisor. And then we take the necessary steps from there. Now, of course, as an adult, you definitely would want to know and recognize student to student because we know that phenomenon that can go on where teachers are having relations with students and so on and so forth. But you report that as well, and you have to be able to know how to set the limitations and the boundaries. Myself, when I was in the classroom, I set boundaries. I set boundaries with the students. I don't care if they were taller than I was. I don't care if they were bigger. You have to take that stance and set the boundaries. And if they do not adhere to you as a teacher or a substitute, you definitely want to report that. You definitely want to do that because if you strike a child, there are, some consequences that you would face, including termination. So you definitely want to be able to do that. And if you need assistance, you always turn to your administrator and let them know that before it turns into a dire situation. And
But as a teacher, you can dress in a way that makes it clear who you are, right? And you can stand here. Why don't you stand over there? You know, when she stands up, you don't see someone kind of doing this, or doing this. She's standing up. You are standing up, right? So you own your power. And you own your place, and those are the people that are less likely to get messed with. It's when you get informal and there's blurred boundaries that people get in trouble, and people who are insecure will blur the boundaries. They'll, he's kind of out of the line, but this is a nice guy. And, the boundary is more and more blurred, and that's when you get in trouble.
And if you get on their social media page, or you allow them onto your social media page, and they get your phone number. So sexual harassment doesn't have to stop with the face-to-face, the sexting and texting and getting on your page, or you're on their page, and things start being said. It becomes, a really, really serious situation at that time.
Right. I think we have time for after your comment. Oh, you have time. We have time.
Just protecting yourself as far as making sure that if you have access to resources, that you're putting those resources out in your classroom and carrying them with you and letting people know that that's what you stand for around the school and bringing that education. So if they know that you are a walking person that is going to at any point talk about safety and boundaries and respect, then they're going to hear that rhetoric and they're going to respect that, and they're going to set the tone for the culture of the environment that you're in as well.
Thank you.
Do you have more ones as well? Did you have something to say?
No, not for
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, we have a great question. A young lady, Laura, is going to ask our final question before our remarks from the panel. Yes.
So you guys are talking about all these incidents that have happened in the past. So how are you going to get more people involved in the future to prevent or see less of these incidents if you're not physically there?
Who's your mama?
That's an excellent question. And it goes to what I said about education. It's making sure that we are changing the tone in society. And that means that any opportunity, each one of us is taking that opportunity to educate and share with anyone you see. We practice our elevator speeches at our job to say, hey, if you have, 30 minutes with someone, what are you going to say that's going to make an impact so that you can let them know what you stand for and your values. And as many of those conversations that you're having, as many people are educated, and that is passing on in the people around you, from your mother to you, to your friends, and your school.
Yeah, I think that question deserves a little answer or remarks from all of our panelists.
I think it's creating a new normal. You know, my girls, some of the things that I tolerated when I was their age or in my 20s, to say that to them now, it's totally foreign to even think that we even ever thought that way or thought that was okay. So I think creating normal for boys and for girls.
So absolutely, Brooke, it is about being able to stand up and stand with your friends that are experiencing situations such as this, and being able to speak with them and share that if you're not going to say anything, I will, but not allow them to suffer in silence, because if they have a cohort of friends that are going to support them, then you stand up with them and do that. But it is about being resourceful and not being afraid to open your mouth and tell someone, okay?
And don't join in that bullying thinking that that'll keep people from picking on you or you're in a power situation. So important, yeah.
So whatever your job is, you know, we all have different roles that we play, but you can fix a legal problem, for example, and then look for ways in that context to have a broader impact. So you educate the people so that you're telling them not just what they do in their situation, but how it would apply to someone else in another situation, so that you're dropping a pebble and then there's these ripples, you know, that go. But one of the scariest things is that in a lawsuit, you very rarely have all the witnesses who are willing to testify that should be willing to testify. And in the California Yoga Man cases, which I'm dealing with now, there's several women who stayed at the studio and taught and supported this man, you know, in his studio, and several who would not be witnesses in any of the cases. And there's a powerful Martin Luther King saying that you don't remember the words of your enemies, you remember the silence of your friends. And that's just so, so important.
I think standing with your friends, and in particular speaking up, is very important. If you witness it, don't stay silent. A lot of times in the workplace, other employees have witnessed a situation, but they also fear losing their jobs if they get involved. A lot of times we have to overcome that fear and understand that standing up and doing the right thing is more important than the job. That you can probably find another job, but what this person is going through is going to affect them for the rest of their life. And that you can probably help stop that and help this person have a better life in the future by not allowing it to continue. So standing by, speaking up, and supporting, that would be my answer.
Very inspiring words. Thank you for that excellent question. I can tell we have the next generations really on point and ready to do the work, and I could not be more proud. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank the panel very much. Also for the work that they are doing. Yes?
Could I speak for free resource that's available?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
If
If anyone also wants to speak to any resources that we need to be looking at, or training resources that we haven't mentioned yet, for sure.
Hi, my name is Beverly Larson. I'm with the Charlotte branch of the American Association of University Women. AAUW is a national organization that is very directed toward reducing the wage gap for women especially. And we have a free resource that's wonderful. It's called Work Smart, and it's an online program that you may avail yourself of free of charge. I'm also a facilitator for that program, and we've trained, the Charlotte branch alone has trained 100 women in workshops, both business women, and then we have something called Smart Start that we've done actually at this university and at several other universities to get graduating seniors the skills they need in the workplace to negotiate, to handle interviews, and so forth. And if you want to, it's a free workshop, online, self-paced. You can find it at aauw.org. We've trained 75,000 women in the United States with a goal of 30 million. So we really need you to distribute this, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and gentlemen as well can do this program. I met this morning with the Mecklenburg County Library Associations, and we are going to be facilitating some of these workshops at the libraries throughout the year. So look for those in your library notifications as well.
Great, thank you. Are there any other resources that we have not mentioned that we want to be sure to leave our audience with? Yes.
I'll keep this quick. This is an FYI. So there's legislation before the state assembly right now you guys should know about. So I don't know if you know, North Carolina is the only state where if you withdraw consent in the middle of an act, it may not be considered rape. You can't say no after things commence. And that's based on legal precedent. I feel out of my realm, so you should be saying this. But
Jackson has a really good explanation of this on his in his Instagram, wherever else he speaks. He's got a really, it's just perfect, concise, completely accurate.
So there's a gap in state law or interpretation of law. Beyond that, there's also an issue of if you have consumed alcohol or drugs, that they may not be able to prosecute for sexual assault. That passed unanimously with the House, and it got stalled in the Senate. And so, not necessarily a resource, so pardon me, but I think as women in the room, you should know that this is sitting before your lawmakers at this point.
Okay. Really important. Any other information we need to share with the audience?
Just quickly, Safe Alliance operates a 24/7 hotline, which is called the Greater Charlotte Helpline, and it's a resource for people who have questions about domestic violence and sexual assault, and also they offer parenting support. So people can call anonymously to get information and get connected to their resources, safe shelters, so local resources, and also they'll try to connect with resources in other counties that fits the person's needs.
Thank you. I've learned so much. I'm sure we all have, although we have a lot to learn and a lot more work to do, as has been shared. So thank you. I think Stephanie has a few more remarks.
Can I say one last thing? Sorry, just came to my mind that a lot of this starts with educating our boys. You know, a lot of times we hear when they're growing up, boys shall be boys, and a lot of it is educating our boys and teaching them what is right and not right, and treating no women.
So very quickly, I am Melissa Lefkoe. I am the Vice Chair of the Women's Advisory Board, and I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and I especially want to thank our panel and our moderator for doing such a wonderful job of educating us. I certainly feel much more empowered, and I feel as if I have the resources and the information to move forward and help to make Mecklenburg County a place where all of us, women and men, can feel empowered to make our county a better place for all of us to live, work, and raise our families. Very quickly, I noticed, so we have a couple of other commissioners who have attended tonight. I want to thank them for coming. Commissioner Coughlin and Commissioner McDowell, thank you very much for attending. We greatly appreciate you being here. I also want to thank Peter and Elise, and I don't know if Rihanna's here. I don't think she made it tonight, but Peter and Elise and Rihanna work with us, and they help to make everything that we do that much easier. So thank you very much for doing that. I would also like to thank the vendors who came out tonight. I hope that you had a chance to speak with them in the lobby before. If not, I'm sure they'll still be hanging out for just a couple of minutes after. And I do hope that she will stop by and say hello, and especially take a moment to look at the airing our dirty laundry exhibit, which is in the lobby. It is very powerful and brought me to tears, so I had to stop looking at it, but I recommend that you do look at that. I want to thank my fellow board members, but especially Julie Williams, our fearless leader. She spearheaded this event, and she's made it a wonderful experience for all of us, so thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Oh, yes, we recognized her before.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes, she is, and she, yes, and we thank you greatly for all